Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. My name is Reuben, joined here with no one, with the others, and we're back to review another episode of Pluribus, episode 6. Yeah, it's been such a good show so far. I didn't watch it week to week. I kind of binged the first 5, but now going week to week, it's been fun to see what people are theorizing, talking about, the things that they like, the things that they don't like. I didn't quite realize how unpopular Carol was for a lot of fans. And then also the opposite. There's a lot of people out there who really like her. I think I'm in that camp because Ray Seahorn built up so much goodwill from Better Call Saul, in which I'm currently doing a rewatch up to season 4. She's so good. Please watch Better Call Saul. But before I get into this review of Pluribus episode 6, HPD, which I thought was a play on high definition copyright protection, but no, it's about human protein. I want to let you guys know that you can listen to this wherever you get your podcasts, maybe? I don't know. Sometimes we do the solos on podcasting platforms, other times we don't. But you can get more Nerd Soup podcasts at our Patreon page. We recently released a review of Task, the HBO show, which was excellent. And we also recorded a 2-hour podcast, myself, Cam, and Andres, where we talked about the best video games of the 21st century so far. Honestly, one of my favorite podcasts we've ever done, just because it was packed with nostalgia, talking about all these games that we love, games that we didn't like, but, you know, the games that left the lasting impression this century so far. I never listened to our podcasts. I found myself listening to that while at the gym. So Cam and Andres, they really know their stuff, so go ahead and check it out if you're interested. And follow us on social medias at Nerd Soup across all social medias. All right, let's get into the review of HPD, Pluribus, episode 6. Fun cameo there with John Cena giving the explanation. Maybe if Carol had John Cena the entire time, it would be an easier pill to swallow, because he's such a friendly face, and he's become such a great actor, and also becoming a king of cameos when he popped up in the Bear, spoilers, season 3. That was shocking. This one was also shocking. You get all the jokes about how Carol's looking at a blank screen. Ha ha ha. That was funny. But no, the explanation, and it's a funny play on, you know, the first rule of comedy is that the jokes write itself as long as you have a funny situation. And that's what this show really has become. It's a situational comedy where the main premise just lends itself to so much humor. So the idea of Carol having her own little horror movie, Discoveries, with the handheld camera going through the factory, finding all these wrapped body parts, like she's uncovering this horrific mystery. And then when she reunites with Diabate, he's like, we already knew all of this because we've just been asking the questions. And she's like, oh, okay, that's great. And then he reveals that they've been meeting every Tuesdays and Thursdays or Tuesdays and Fridays. And she's like, oh, okay, that's fine. You guys didn't think to include me? No, I was busy anyway. You know, I was uncovering this mystery that you guys already discovered. But that's fine. You know, I'm fine. I'm just going to go have a mental breakdown in the bathroom. And I think that's where Ray Seahorn has always shined as an actress. Her best scene, her most iconic scene in Better Call Saul is her just sitting on the bus for about 5 minutes. And without any spoilers, it's some of the best acting done in that show. Arguably the strongest acting scene in that entire show. And I think for all the talk about how unlikable her character is, which I think is deliberate, it's, you know, it's funny to have the main character in this situation be someone who was already so miserable. And in many ways, I've seen people describe it as Vince Gilligan taking on the mob of, can't you just enjoy things? You know, when something comes out and it's really popular, has a lot of hype, and maybe it's not quite as good as people expected, you get a lot of pushback against the critics. Can't you guys just enjoy anything? So that's kind of Carol's whole thing here, is she's not willing to join with the hive, or even to join with the 12 other survivors who are enjoying their time. And I think that it's very relatable, that scene of her in the bathroom, for anyone who's ever felt ostracized by society or by their family. And I know these 12 characters aren't her family, but it's really the only people she has left outside of the others. So it feels like a personal attack. And it very much is, because of Carol's behavior, because of the volatile nature of her character when she had those outbursts, the terrible things that happened. It makes sense that they would be weary of including her in these meetings. And it's also the nature of the character, even when she's talking to Diabate, and he tells her about the discovery they made about converting everybody. She has a bit of a panic attack there because she's so worried that they're going to do it without her consent. She wants it ironclad in writing or on a giant Las Vegas billboard that she does not consent. So even though she can play along, she can have a normal conversation with Diabate, she can joke with him, they can bond over breakfast, still inside of her, she's so adamantly against the hive. But it starts to weigh on her emotional well-being in a way that I found to be very relatable. And I think a lot of people out there will find it relatable too. It's one thing to reject this alien hive mind collective. I think a lot of people could agree with that. But it's an entirely different thing to be rejected by the 12 remaining survivors who are not a part of this hive mind, who are still individuals, but they're more willing to embrace this new reality. So for Carol, it's probably the first time Carol has felt like she doesn't fit in. And I think that's something that she probably grappled with her entire life, just based on the nature of the character. So it's the world before this happened coming back to Carol in a way that kind of breaks her in that moment. Circling back to Ray Seahorn's ability to really deliver great performances in these quieter, smaller moments, that's really just her bread and butter. And it's similar to what we've gotten with Manus as well, where obviously he's a character that doesn't speak much. He's not speaking to the hive. He's trying to put things together on his own. And he's really shined in those smaller, quieter moments. Like even when he goes back to his home and he has that meal, it's so spooky, the way that they're playing with lighting and still the most beautiful show I think I've ever seen in my life. This is where I get frustrated with television because television so often looks like shit. And a lot of it has to do with the budget, but I also think it's the expectation. People don't go into television looking for incredible visual storytelling. They're coming for the narrative. They're coming for the week-to-week character development, plot twists, story development, which is all fine, but sometimes I feel like TV can be lacking when it comes to the visuals, not this show. And that's something that Vince Gilligan has been known for, even going back to Breaking Bad, but really hitting a new level in Better Call Saul. And I think out of the three, this is so far his best looking show. But yeah, those smaller, quieter moments that we found that we keep encountering throughout these episodes have been really strong, especially with Manus's. But like I said, with Carol as well. It's all so funny the way that it's playing out. I found myself absolutely losing patience with that voice message, even in the previous episodes. But this one, how anxious Carol was to deliver that message where she's just like, yeah, come on, get over with it. Isn't there a button where I can skip, where I can talk to the operator? And it's just hysterical how they still are keeping their distance from her. They won't speak to her face to face. When they get wind that she's coming to Las Vegas, it ends Diabate's party early. And we've talked about the ethics of what that character is doing in our previous review, which still, it feels like it's a premise where there's a lot of questions that people are going to have and a lot of ethical and moral concerns that I think the show will eventually get into more in depth. But that was funny, seeing him at the casino where he's upset with the man with the eye patch when he breaks character, when Diabate's got the winning hand. And I just love poker in movies and shows. One of my favorite all-time movies is Casino Royale, and the poker game is absolutely ridiculous, but because I don't know how poker really works, I become glued to it. I'm like, oh man, the tension, the ticks, the bluffs, it's all so exciting. And even when it's set up, this is kind of the shit I would be doing, where like I would just be setting up high stakes poker games and winning, and everybody's like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. This guy's a high roller. I wonder what he does. But that was funny. And it's also, it's interesting that it's the characters, with Carol, she was such a miserable person before all of this happened. The only thing she really wanted was the company of Helen. She doesn't deal well with other people. She's not very social. She's the loner who hates to be lonely. Shout out to Freddie Gibbs. And I think it's interesting to see the differences between Carol and the 12 other survivors. Like someone like Diabate, when they're sharing that breakfast and he's watching how Carol smashes the avocado on the toast, adds the bacon, and makes an impromptu sandwich. That's something he hasn't quite experienced, it looks like. He's learning from Carol. And I think he's living out a lot of his fantasies, for better or worse, in a way that speaks to his lack of privilege before this happened. That maybe he was someone who came from nothing and always wanting for more. And now he has that chance to live his life like a GTA character. But even in those smaller moments where he's picking up behaviors from Carol, I found to be very interesting. The way that it's not just the big hedonistic experiences that he's enjoying, but it's those tiny things as well. I just find it so hysterical that she was doing all of this work and all she really had to do was ask those questions. And also the idea that the others are going to starve within 10 years. So her discovery with all the body parts and the milk is revealed by John Cena, and that's how they're sustaining life amongst the others. An interesting piece of foreshadowing when they're all in Spain and Zosha says that they would prefer to be vegetarian. They never say flat out that they are vegetarian. So it's interesting, once again, the ethics of they refuse to kill, that they would prefer to be vegetarian, but they're still willing to take the protein from these dead bodies. So they're drawing interesting lines here that they're willing to cross. And the behavior of the others is going to be something everybody keeps an eye on. You know, even the outburst by the man with the eye patch. What happens if the others, while playing up these roles, accidentally harm somebody? You know, what if that glass goes flying and it lands in somebody's eye? You know, how are they going to respond to that? You know, are there ways to trick them into being violent, where they think that they're being accommodating to your needs? Because that's also another funny aspect, is that they're essentially trying to groom them. They're trying to treat them as well as they can so that maybe eventually they will give their consent and join the hive mind. But is there a way to, you know, tie them in a rope mentally to where they have no choice but to do what you're asking, even though it breaks their own rules? That's a potentially fun aspect that the show can get into. But yeah, going back to Manusos, his whole character has been fascinating to watch because they're coming from the angle of the doomer. Doesn't know quite what has happened, but he knows it's bad. And he's listening for all the radio frequencies. He finds that one frequency where it appears that something is happening. Everything else is staticky, but something is there. What's there? Who knows? I'm sure on Reddit they're theorizing about it. I actually saw one theory that was fascinating that I don't necessarily agree with, but the reason that he was discovered later than the other survivors is because he was initially a part of the hive mind. He escaped, and now he's trying to figure out how they communicate, how they operate, but he's been so spooked by the experience that he refuses to talk to them. Because when he gets that tape from Carol, he says dose. He realizes that there are 12 other survivors. He goes back home. He enjoys a meal. He has that incredibly hilarious exchange with his mother where they're trying to present themselves as nice and caring, talking to him, Hijo, is there anything you need? And he's like, you're not my mom because my mom was a bitch. So better luck next time. But yeah, his whole character has just been really fascinating, him trying to put the pieces together. And I talked about the visuals. Some of these scenes with Manu have been just brilliant. It's like the setting has totally changed. You're getting a new perspective. It truly is just like the best looking show ever. I keep saying that, but if it's true, I'm going to keep repeating it. I don't know how he's going to get to Albuquerque from Paraguay. That's going to be quite the road trip. And I know it can become very, very treacherous, especially when you get to the Darien Gap. If you haven't heard about the Darien Gap, look into that shit. It's like walking to Mordor. And it's funny because the next episode is called The Gap. I wonder if that's going to be an episode that only focuses on Manusos. You know, he's going through this tough terrain, this incredibly difficult road trip on his own, with his own devices and gear and whatever he's bringing with him. And eventually he has to give in. He needs help from the others. You know, he finds himself in a desperate situation and he has no other choice. I think that could be a really fun, you know, one-off episode for that character. Yeah, but it's been fun. It's got shades of, you know, Spielberg, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, just the way that he's filming that character and keeping him isolated. It almost feels like an entirely different movie, an entirely different perspective on this situation. And very similar to Carol, you know, not trusting, not willing to talk to the hive mind. He wants to figure things out. He wants to put things the way they were, even the way that he leaves little notes on the boxes for his customers. It shows that he has a strong sense of honor and that he may be holding out hope that this could be reversible, which we discovered that it is. We don't know quite how it can be reversed, but it is possible. And also getting the information of how they can be converted, pretty nasty, you know, big needle inside of your hip bone, extract some stem cells. It always comes down to those stem cells, doesn't it? We need to put more funding into that shit. Big, nasty procedure. You know, kind of reminded me of The Exorcist, you know, when she's getting the spinal tap, which is the scariest scene of that movie. But maybe we'll see that procedure done in one of these upcoming episodes, you know, when somebody decides to give in to the hive mind. The one character from the previous episode who wanted to be reunited with her family, I think it could be her. And I think, and the show is also speaking to, you know, some of the cultural differences of these characters. You know, the idea of being reunited in one collective with the rest of the world and your ancestors and the people you loved. Depending on your religion and your faith, your beliefs, that could be something that's appealing to you. Maybe that's something you already believe in a spiritual manner. Now you're getting that opportunity in the physical world where you know it's real, it's possible. Maybe it's not quite like you envisioned it, but it's something. It's something that is intriguing to you because of what you already believe. With Carol's character, you know, there's really nothing about her that speaks to any religious belief or any sort of faith. And I think that, you know, her being so miserable can maybe speak to the way secular society, specifically in the West, can create people who feel detached from society, that they don't have that same sense of community. That is something that religion can be good for, that it brings people together, you know, gives them something to believe in other than just themselves. Once again, it's not a defense of religion. I'm particularly not a religious person, so I could find myself more sympathetic towards Carol in this situation. Not just because of that, but I think that's something that plays into it as well. And overall, with all the survivors, like with Diabate, who's a character that has become, you know, kind of part of the big three here with Carol, Manusos, and Diabate. The way that they're really focusing on the way that they're experiencing this and, you know, the individuality of those characters. And he's turning out to be quite a complicated character in the sense of he's such a shameless hedonist, but he also really cares about Carol. He's not willing to turn his back on her just yet. But there's also the possibilities of, so the others can't lie, but Diabate can. So maybe there's more information he's learned that he's not quite giving her. Or maybe there's something that the 12 are doing. Maybe there's some sort of manipulation going on here. The dilemma of the others starving, because if Carol does want to reverse the world, you need that world to still exist. So nearly a billion people have been wiped out, but there's still 7 billion left, over 7 billion. You need those people to survive if you ever want to put them back into their bodies. You know, it keeps reminding me of Scooby-Doo when they got the big pot of souls, then they all fly back into the individual bodies. If you want that to happen, you need the bodies to still be alive. You know, that would be an important piece of that puzzle. Overall, it was a good episode. I enjoy the way that he's playing with different genres, where the opening very much feels like a horror film. The handheld camera, the dark abandoned factory, going to Diabate, which was way more humorous, and then getting those human moments between them. You know, even Diabate having that phone call with the others, it felt very personal. Like he's truly in love with the others because they can inhabit all these sexy women. He's diabolical, but also likable. So, and then the ending with Manusos, him setting off on this new adventure, and I really hope that the next episode solely focuses on him, because what we've gotten so far has been really fun. Let's really open up the world for this character. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this review. We will be back next week. We're going to try to take these week to week, and I may have a co-host with me, so that'll be fun. It all depends on sleep schedules, work schedules. You know how life is. But thanks for listening, thanks for sharing, and yeah, we'll see you very soon for another review of Pluribus. And make sure you watch Better Call Saul, because that's a good show too. A lot of people didn't watch it. The Emmys didn't watch it, but I watched it.